Hello Year 8, welcome back to Biology and Science with me, Dr. Hill. We're going to go through Lesson 3 today on bacteria. If you've not yet watched Lesson 1 and 2 on microscopes and eukaryotic cells, please stop the video now and go back and watch those and do those first. Right, bacteria. So we're going to be looking at today what bacteria are, what they look like structurally, and what they're used for in humans. To get you started and get you thinking, have a look at the question on your screens right now. Do you know the names of any species of bacteria? And list them if you do. You might remember some of the names of things that make you ill, things you've heard mentioned on TV or at home or in school. Don't worry about spelling. Think of the names if you're worried about writing them down, because bacteria tend to have quite complicated names. There's a super challenge on the screen as well. In the picture above, what type of microscope was used to take it and how can you tell? And in this picture, what we can see are thousands of different species of bacteria shown in different colours, different shapes and sizes, and a piece of food here that's being digested by the bacteria in the picture. Okay, I'd like you to hit pause on your video and see if you can't answer those two questions. Right, if you're not quite ready, if you haven't really got yourself settled, grab a pen and paper or type up your notes, type up the title, which is bacteria, and we're going to see how you did with these two questions. The names of any species of bacteria, the one that I hope you've put in or written down is E. coli. The E stands for Escherichia. Kudos to you if you knew that. E. coli is a species of bacteria, well done. Salmonella is another one that causes food poisoning. Kudos to you as well if you put that down as well. The most common mistakes that people put when they're answering names of any species of bacteria is they just simply say things that aren't bacteria. No worries if you've done that. So, if you want to know what you've said is a type of bacteria, you can email it to me. You can do a quick Google search and see if you were right or not. For the super challenge, the picture above was taken with an electron microscope, and well done if you said that. You can tell it's taken with an electron microscope because it's really clear and detailed and the shapes are almost 3D. And that's because electron microscopes have really good resolution and magnification. The colour in the picture is fake. It was added in afterwards using Photoshop. It's used to show you all the different shapes and sizes of the bacteria shown in the picture. Okay, moving on. The aim of today is to describe the key features of bacteria. We're going to look at what the word prokaryote means. We're going to describe the features of a bacterial cell, so you're going to need a pencil or a pen or something to draw that and add the labels. And we're going to look at the uses and dangers of bacteria to humans. Some of the new words I hope you'll pick up and use today: pathogen, prokaryote, flagella, plasmid, chromosomal DNA, and ribosome, which we have used before. Right, prokaryotes then. Prokaryotes, sometimes called prokaryotic cells, are all microscopic organisms, meaning they are so small you need a microscope to see them. They're all around you right now. You cannot see them unless you're looking down a microscope, and it needs to be a pretty good one at that. What makes prokaryotic cells different from what we've already learnt about eukaryotic cells, such as animal and plant cells, is that they do not have a nucleus where they store their DNA. So if you look in here, you can see the dot of an animal cell. That's a nucleus where its DNA is found. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. Their DNA is just floating around in the cytoplasm, doing as it pleases. It's also worth mentioning prokaryotic cells are quite a lot smaller than eukaryotic cells. So bacteria are much smaller than animal and plant cells because sometimes they infect these cells. So they need to be small enough to fit inside of them. Bacteria are an example of a prokaryotic cell. All bacteria are prokaryotes, so it's a good example to use today because it makes it a little bit more relatable for you. All bacteria are prokaryotic cells. Bacteria themselves, they are alive, they are living, and it's strange for some people to think of that. They're microscopic, you cannot see them with the naked eye, you need to use a microscope. Bacteria get a really bad reputation as causing diseases and making you feel rubbish and ill, but bacteria can be friendly as well as unfriendly. Humans use bacteria for making some foods like yogurts and cheeses, and we'll look at that later. If you get ill due to bacteria, then antibiotics can be used to treat them. Antibiotics are just a group of chemicals that kill bacteria without harming your cells in your body. So the antibiotics is a type of chemical that can be used to kill unfriendly bacteria should they make you ill. Bacteria come in all shapes and sizes, and our next job is going to be having a look at that. Here are some of the weird and wonderful shapes and sizes that bacteria come in. Now you can see they're all completely different. So when we look at the structure of a bacterial cell and a prokaryotic cell in a second, we're going to look at what an average cell looks like. So not all of these cells will look like exactly like what we're going to draw, but we're going to draw what they look like on average in general. So if you haven't already got one, you're going to need a pencil so you can draw this. You might want to copy and paste a similar picture if you're working on your computer. What's the most important though is that you copy out this diagram as best you can. I tried to find a really simple version, so hopefully no complaints about having to draw what it looks like. And then I'd like you to add the labels. I apologise, I forgot to draw an arrow for cell wall, but it should be pointing to this black layer here. Not the yellow one, the black one. Okay, hit pause if you need to, so you've got time to copy out the diagram and the labels. Okay, I'm going to get started talking through what each of the labels mean. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to add the information as you listen to your diagram, and I am going to talk quite quickly, so if I'm going too fast, just hit pause and take a moment to write each of these down. I'm going to start with the slime coat or capsule. It's pointing to the yellow layer on the outside. The slime coat is pretty much as it describes. It's a slimy outer layer for the bacterial cell. The slime coat, its job is to protect the bacterial cell from the immune system. So if this bacterial cell happens to find its way inside your body, the job of the slime coat is to help it hide from your immune system, which otherwise would destroy it. The job of the slime coat is also to protect the cell from drying out. If you think of slime coat, I want you to think of like snot or mucus. It's that covering the outside of the cell. And what that does is it stops the cell drying out. If this bacterial cell or prokaryotic cell, as we can call it, lives in water and it finds itself suddenly out of water, the slime coat will help to keep it damp a little bit longer and help it to survive a bit longer. Right, the cell wall. The cell wall, this should be pointing to this black line here on the inside of the slime coat. The cell wall is made of something different than the cell wall we see in plant cells. Plant cells have a cell wall, and its job is to protect the cell. And that's the same for bacteria too, for prokaryotic cells. But in plants, the cell wall is made of cellulose. In bacteria or prokaryotic cells, the cell wall is not made of cellulose. It's made of a chemical called peptidoglycan, but you do not need to write that down. Just say the job of the cell wall is to protect the cell. Next, we've got ribosomes, these tiny little dots. They're really, really small and they're all over the cell. The job of a ribosome is exactly the same as it is in an animal cell and a plant cell. And the job of a ribosome is to make proteins. This cell's going to need proteins to be able to grow and divide and make copies of itself. The ribosomes in a prokaryotic cell tend to be smaller than the ones found in eukaryotic cells, but otherwise their job is exactly the same. And that's the same with the cytoplasm too. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like liquid that fills the cell, and it's where the chemical reactions happen. And that's exactly the same description as you would give it for a plant cell or an animal cell. Next, we've got something new. We've got something called plasmid DNA. This is a perfect circle. There's more than one of them. Some bacteria have this, some bacteria don't. Plasmid DNA help bacteria to communicate. Bacteria can't talk or write messages or text one another, but what they can do is they can share DNA if they need to communicate, and that's what plasmid DNA is. We simply say plasmid DNA is an extra piece of DNA found in a prokaryotic cell, and it can be passed from one bacteria to another. The most recognisable feature of a prokaryotic cell over here is the flagella. It's a tail, basically. The job of the flagella is to help movement. This bacterial cell might live in water, and the flagella spins around and it helps propel the cell forward so that the cell can move. Weirdly enough, the bacteria cannot control where it goes. There's no steering involved, it's just a go button. So imagine having a car with an accelerator pedal, but no steering wheel. The bacteria can move around, but they cannot choose where they go. They can only hope that where they go is better than where they were before. And they do that using the flagella. Not all bacteria will have a flagella because if they don't live in water, there's no point having a tail. You can't really move around anywhere. So it's called the flagella. Next, we've got cell or plasma membrane. Now that is inside the cell wall. It's the innermost layer. So you've got slime coat, you've got cell wall, and then you've got cell membrane, sometimes called the plasma membrane. I know you have a cell membrane inside an animal cell and a plant cell. The plasma membrane is not quite the same, which is why we've got it here, but its job is very similar. It controls what goes in and out of the bacterial cell. We've got a second lot of DNA, and this is the most important piece of DNA in a prokaryotic cell. It's called the chromosomal DNA. Just like you have chromosomes in your body, bacterial prokaryotic cells have one big messy loop of chromosomal DNA. It's a circle, but it's a messy circle, and that is what controls the cell. It gives it its shape, tells it what to do. It's the genetic material of the cell, just like that's found inside the nucleus of a eukaryotic cell. But of course, prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. It's just found floating in the cytoplasm. Now, most importantly, this message at the bottom. Some bacterial cells do not have all of the organelles above. It depends where and how they live. And some bacterial cells, as I said, they might not have the flagella, they might not have a slime coat, and they might not have plasmids. But this is with the average structure of a prokaryotic cell. Okay, if you need to pause the video, go back and add some information to each of your labels, please do. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving on. Right, good bacteria. I told you bacteria can be good or bad. Most bacteria on Earth do not harm humans. We simply do not react to them. Picture of the dead leaves up here. Bacteria's main job on Earth is to decompose. What that means, it means to break down. So when an organism dies, like these leaves on this tree, the bacteria's job is to break down those leaves, break down the nutrients, return them to the soil so they can be used to grow new trees, make the soil more fertile. So it's the job of bacteria to decompose and break down dead organisms, which is good. We need those nutrients to be able to grow plants and crops, food. Some bacteria help humans, such as those in your intestine. If you didn't have bacteria living inside your small and your large intestine, then the rate that you digest food would be so slow you'd end up starving before you could get the nutrients out of the food that you eat. So we need bacteria in our intestines to digest food, and scientists have done studies and found that bacteria move into your digestive system just seconds and minutes after you were born. As well as that, humans have learnt to use some species of bacteria. What that means is we've found the bacteria and we've convinced them to do what we want them to do by using them in cooking and in the process of making food. So we wouldn't have foods like cheese or yogurt if we hadn't learnt how to use bacteria to turn milk into cheese and to turn milk into yogurt. So two foods that very importantly are made using helpful bacteria. Unfortunately, some bacteria are bad for us. We have a special name for bacteria that make us feel sick, and we call these pathogens. So any species of bacteria that makes us unwell is a pathogen. Okay? Pathogens can be infectious, which means they get passed from one person to another, and they can release toxins. That's the important word. Pathogens release toxins when they get inside your body, and that's what makes you feel unwell. So here we've got some bacteria in this woman's stomach. It's clear that she's eaten something that had the bacteria on, and that's how they got into her stomach, and there they are releasing toxins that are making her feel unwell. This is a picture of Salmonella, a species of bacteria that can cause food poisoning, much like this picture at the top. Most bacteria struggle to get into your body. Okay, so your skin covers most of your body, and there are only a few ways that bacteria can actually get inside your body. Eating food is one of them, breathing in is another. Through cuts or any other openings in your body is another way that pathogens can get in. But actually your skin is very successful at blocking most pathogens from getting in. If you do find that you're ill with a pathogen, remember you can always take antibiotics to get rid and kill the bacteria, but mostly your immune system will do the job for you. By the time you get a doctor's appointment to get the antibiotics, your immune system's probably killed most of the bacteria already. This was an interesting story. This is a news article back from 2014, and I don't know what you know about Chernobyl, but Chernobyl was the site of a big radioactive disaster. In Chernobyl, a radioactive power station exploded and lots of radiation leaked out into the surrounding areas. And what they found is in these surrounding areas, lots of the plants and trees weren't decomposing properly. So the trees were falling down and the leaves were just lying there on top of the grass. They weren't breaking down and decaying and crumbling like we normally see. And the scientists realised this was down to the decomposers, the bacteria, the insects, the microbes and the funguses that live in the area, all being damaged and harmed by the radiation given out by Chernobyl, that they weren't able to decay. So it's just a really interesting way to remember that bacteria are really important for decomposing and letting nutrients return to the environment. Right, question time. Just to test your listening skills so far, we've not got much more left. Can you have a go at the 5 questions on your screen? Hit pause if you need to. Why do some bacteria have a flagella? What are the 2 types of DNA in bacteria? Look at your diagram that you've labelled for that one. Which is bigger, a eukaryotic cell or a prokaryotic cell? One word answer. Which foods are made using bacteria? If you can remember both of them, great. What do we call bacteria that make us feel ill? Let's get rid of that. Okay, hit pause if you need to. Right, answer time. If you're not ready for answers, hit pause. Why do some bacteria have flagella? The flagella helps the bacteria to move. What are the 2 types of DNA in bacteria? Plasmid DNA and chromosomal DNA. Which cell is bigger? It's a eukaryotic cell, much larger than a prokaryotic cell. Which foods are made using bacteria? Cheese and yogurt. There are loads of others, but those are the 2 we're using as an example for today. What do we call bacteria that make us feel ill? We call them pathogens. Pathogens. Okay, well done if you got 5 out of 5 for that. I'd like to see your answers written down when you scan in your work or take pictures of your work from Microsoft Teams. Okay, your last job before I let you go is I'd like you to do a little bit of research and writing about bacteria. Okay, so you need to write this as a paragraph or as a few sentences, something that includes your own ideas. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read the story, which is at this link here. I'll put this in the description so you don't have to type it out. Read the story and sum up the results they found. Okay, I'd like you to include the name and the number of some of the bacteria they found in the story and where the bacteria was discovered. I'd like you, after you've finished that, to say which organelles are found in bacterial cells. So use the diagram that you've drawn to help you with that. So a few sentences saying, oh, this is a news article about bacteria found in blah, blah, blah. They found this many. This is where they came from. It was interesting because of this. Bacteria are made up of lots of different organelles, such as the blah, 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 which does the blah, 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 just so you can practice reorganising that information we've gone through today. If you're feeling lazy and you don't want to type this out or you can't find the link to click on, all I typed into Google was belly button bacteria, and this link to the National Geographic was the first story that came up. Once you've done your work, can you email it to the Cowley Science Department, or you can upload it to Microsoft Teams so your teachers can mark it and give you some feedback, and then head on over to Educate to take the quiz based on this lesson. Best of luck and thank you for listening, and I really do look forward to going through some of the work that you've done. Okay, thanks, bye.